Before I start, I should warn you that this stuff is kinda gross, so if you're squeamish, you should probably just click off now. So, what is a rat king? Picture a cluster of rats with their tails tied together, fused by sap or filth in some disgusting, grotesque knot, impossible to escape naturally. The few tiny rats now moving as some monstrous, writhing, otherworldly entity. This isn't just the plot of some bad horror movie, this is a real thing. Supposedly. It's disputed whether or not these are natural accidents or just hoaxes, but regardless, the image lingers in your mind. The question must be asked then, why? Why do we find the image of multiple squirming rats fused as one so disturbing? And what does this say about us? To answer that, we need to go back to the 16th century, to the first stories, the earliest sightings, the origins of the Rat King. The earliest known record of a rat king comes from 1564 in Germany. Interestingly, the term rat king wasn't initially used to describe literal rats. It was instead an insult meant for people who leeched off of others, a sentiment used by Martin Luther to insult Pope Leo X. He says, "Finally, there is the Pope, the king of rats, right at the top." Superstition was rampant in this period, and when people discovered rat kings, they were seen as signs of plague, witchcraft, or even punishments from God. In a world that was already haunted by disease and famine and fear of the supernatural, the image of a writhing, conjoined vermin fit perfectly as an omen of evil. In 1828, a rat king was discovered in a fireplace in Buchheim, Germany. It consists of 32 individual rats fused together to create this unholy rat amalgamation, the largest known rat king to ever be recorded in history. Currently being displayed in the Mauritianum Museum in Altenburg, Germany. A monstrous centerpiece, if you ask me. Some natural history museums do keep rat kings for display, though many scientists do remain skeptical, suggesting that they could be hoaxes or staged, but some discoveries push back against the doubt. In 1963, in Rookfin, Netherlands, a rat king of 7 rats was found. When researchers took x-rays, they found something odd: calluses and fractures on the rats' tails, signs that these animals hadn't been glued together after they died. They lived and suffered for some time while fused together. A horrifying story. Just imagine for a moment being a rat in a rat king while still alive, unable to move freely, most likely dying slowly from dehydration or starvation. But are these clusters of rats truly natural accidents, or instead just elaborate hoaxes meant to play on people's emotions? We'll need to look at a bit of biology. While there's nothing logically impossible about a rat king, they are undoubtedly rare, and as strange as it sounds, rat kings can occur naturally. Picture this: you're a rat, and it's a snowstorm. You hide from the cold in a crack or crevice, and form a huddle with your rat family and friends to keep warm. How else are you meant to survive the cold? You're unaware of the fact that your tails are coated in sap or feces, or just slowly freezing due to the winter air. It doesn't matter to you though. All that matters is staying alive. Maybe after a while the storm dies down, but over time, without realizing it, your tails fuse together, and now? Nothing. Just the squirming. All that's left to do is squirm and writhe in agony as you die a slow, painful death. Now, obviously I played it up for dramatic effect, but these are real theories as to how this phenomenon could have developed naturally. For example, in nests typically found in barns or attics, it's not uncommon for rat tails to get coated in sticky materials like tree sap or blood or food waste. And once they're sticky, the tails knot together when the rats huddle closer. The more they struggle to get untied, the firmer the knot becomes. Cold weather can actually do something similar. In my example earlier, I used a snowstorm to illustrate the idea. It is true that rats do often form clusters in cold temperatures to stay warm. If their tails freeze, they can become fused because of the ice freezing their tails together, and similar to tree sap, the more they struggle and squirm, the stronger their tails stick together. In theory though, this shouldn't automatically doom the rats to death, as thawing is always possible. However, if it occurs too late, the rats will obviously just die. Another way is through injury and healing. Rat tails often get injured or get abrasions, and if several wounded tails are pressed together, scar tissue can form across multiple tails, fusing them biologically. This might explain the Rookfin Netherlands case. The fact that some rats were able to survive for extended periods despite being trapped in this way. Okay, so biology does give us a few possibilities, but that only explains the how. It doesn't explain the why. Why, the very idea, claws at our imagination. Look, whether or not the Rat King is a real phenomenon, it's undeniably an image that sticks with you. But why? Why does this seemingly random phenomenon disturb us so deeply? Well, we're wired to feel disgust as a defense mechanism. Disgust evolved as a warning system against things that could carry diseases, and historically rats have had a reputation for spreading diseases and are even blamed for the bubonic plague. More on that later. But the Rat King isn't just gross on a biological level. It psychologically blurs the boundary between the individual and the collective. An idea that we uphold in modern society is that you are not your community, you are your own person. But the Rat King blurs this boundary. You literally fuse with your community. You lose your individuality and start acting as a horde, whether you like it or not. It also embodies the horror of a swarm. Evolution has taught us to fear swarms, whether it's wasps or locusts or piranhas, because what's survivable in small numbers becomes deadly in large ones. 1 or 2 wasps are an annoyance, but a swarm of wasps becomes a hazard. And finally, there's an element of body horror. Body horror unsettles us by twisting something natural, our own bodies, into something alien and unrecognizable. The Rat King is pure body horror. Separate creatures that are forced together into this fused, unnatural form. It's not just a swarm, it's a swarm that's been corrupted. Something familiar made unrecognizable. That violation of the natural boundaries is what makes the image so uniquely horrifying. Because of this fear the Rat King strikes in us, there has been a decent amount of popular media to capitalize on its cultural fear. The most popular media to emphasize this horror would probably be The Last of Us Part 2. I could genuinely talk about this game for ages. The Last of Us takes place in post-apocalyptic America, where a mutated strain of the cordyceps fungus hijacks human brains and turns its hosts into monsters. Halfway through the second game, you play as Abby, searching a hospital basement for medical supplies. The air is thick with spores, it's claustrophobic and it's hostile. When you find the supplies, you hear a strange noise. You look up to find this horrifying creature, the Rat King. Not rats this time, but a grotesque mass of multiple infected humans fused together into this single writhing abomination. The Rat King boss fight is designed to be one of the most intense encounters in the entire series. You're effectively trapped in the basement of a hospital with this absolute alien of a creature trying to kill you. Not only is it trying to kill you, but it's also actively falling apart, as halfway through the boss fight, a part of it rips off and attacks you separately. It's designed to be claustrophobic and give you the fear of the unknown. Up until this point, you've never even seen anything like it, and there's a disgust factor with the writhing bodies as well. The cordyceps fungus is already about the loss of autonomy. It's a parasite that hijacks your brain and body for its own purposes. The Rat King takes that concept to the extreme. It's now multiple people losing their autonomy and individuality, and now acting as one monstrous organism, effectively representing the worst case scenario of the infection. Not death, just endless suffering. The way The Last of Us portrays the Rat King is essentially a humanized version of the real one. Instead of rat tails, it's real human bodies, fused together by the fungus, turning real-world grotesque folklore into modern-day horror. There's a reason why the Rat King is such a guttural image and sticks out so much to humans. It's the perfect fusion of real-world disgust mixed with metaphor. It started out as a regular insult. It was like calling someone a leech or a moocher, and then it evolved to become an omen of death and suffering. It's also just not something we would expect out of nature. Now, while the natural world is full of suffering, at least we can kind of rationalize it to a certain extent. Things like predation or disease or natural selection, they're brutal, but they kind of make sense. The Rat King just doesn't. It feels like something that shouldn't exist. It's rare and unnatural. It's almost contradictory. It's the many becoming one. It's life and death tangled together. It's like nature itself made a mistake, and that's why it triggers such a deep primal fear in us, because it doesn't follow the rules that we expect nature to play by. And it uses our preconceived notion of rats to play into the horror, despite rats not actually being the vermins we make them out to be. Rats themselves aren't inherently evil creatures. In actuality, they've been pretty unfairly demonized throughout history. For centuries, they were blamed for the Black Death, when in reality it was the fleas on their backs spreading the plague. Biologically, they're just another species trying to survive. They're resourceful and social, and even intelligent in their own way. They can even be pretty cute if you have one as a house pet. But that's what makes the Rat King so uncanny. It takes something ordinary, natural, even good to a certain extent, and twists it into something monstrous and unnatural and evil. Rats on their own are just animals, but fused together, writhing as one body, they become a symbol of corruption and decay. It reminds me of something Mel Gibson said in reference to his 2004 film, The Passion of the Christ. The scene where Jesus is being flogged and Satan appears in the crowd, holding some kind of demon baby or something. Basically an attempt to mock God by saying, "Look how much better I take care of my child," or something like that. Gibson said something like, "That's what evil is about, taking something that's good and twisting it a little." In my opinion, that one sentiment captures everything about the Rat King and horror in general, taking something that's good and twisting it a little bit to become evil. The Rat King reminds us that sometimes the scariest monsters are just nature entangled, the natural becoming unnatural. So in the end, whether the Rat King is a rare natural accident, a hoax, or just a story we tell ourselves, the power it has doesn't really come from science. It comes from the imagery. A cluster of rats tangled together isn't just gross. It speaks to something deeper. It blurs the line between the individual and the collective. It embodies disease and corruption, and it twists something familiar into something alien. And that's why it's lasted for centuries, from plague-ridden Europe to natural history museums to modern video games. The Rat King lingers in our minds because it isn't really about the rats. It's about us. Our fear of losing control. Our fear of becoming part of something we can't escape. Our fear of losing ourselves. Thanks for watching.